everyone, this is Jerry, and you probably wonder why you're looking at my character select screen. I took advice from Lizzie to do this as a video. Sort of like get all my thoughts into a, sort of like have it on record and maybe get some feedback from you guys, although I don't really look for feedback when it comes to World of Warcraft. The fact is, I'm trying to choose a raid class for Legion. Now, Lizzie thought I should put this up as a video to sort of like help people, because I know a lot of my viewers don't really play World of Warcraft, and they tend to just sort of slide, sort of like smile and nod when I make jokes about World of Warcraft. But a lot of people have actually started playing it, and I get this a lot, is there are viewers who, because they've been seeing so many references to WoW in my videos, they've actually decided to give it a try, and they're liking it and whatnot, and so maybe like this would help them. But it's mostly just for my benefit. And hey, I've been wanting to do more 3 a.m. rambles lately. Glass of Water doesn't get made until the end of the season, till the season's over. So yeah, like I said, I'm trying to choose a raid class for Legion. This might sound strange to some people, because I've always been someone who lives and dies by the warrior, which you can see up on the screen right now. Of course, the problem is this. When I'm on my warrior, I tank, okay? My warrior is a tank, and the simple fact that I don't like the gameplay style of the other classes. So I don't like arms, I don't like fury, I don't like gladiator. It sounds strange, right? Yeah, but I really don't. I don't like how they play. I've never liked how they play. So what happens is I've been tossed around guilds constantly throughout all of Warlords of Draenor, because they keep getting new tanks, trying out new tank compositions. And just overall, trying to be a tank in a guild is not very secure. Like a good tank, people will hold on to a good tank, but Jesus. Like I said, I get passed around so much throughout this whole expansion. So the decision I came to is, throughout Legion, I'm going to have 3 mains. One intended to tank, one intended to heal, and one intended to DPS. So why not just pick a hybrid class, right? Well, for the uninitiated, class compositions tend to be an issue, so I want to have 3 different classes that I can easily call on. Now, I've actually found that a lot of people say, that's crazy, Down. Well, no, actually, maintaining 3 classes is sure as hell easier than maintaining 11, which I have every single one capped here, you can probably tell. Maintaining 3 classes is relatively easy, doesn't actually take a lot of time. This is down to the fact that, when you have your main who's raid ready to go, you're typically not doing a lot with that, so you can actually start working on the other classes. Now, I've actually found a new guild who wanted me in as a tank. It's a relatively new guild of players who just returned, so I'm looking at a learning curve with... These guys are going to be having a learning curve. I haven't even started Hellfire Citadel yet, but I take what I can get. But around the time that Legion comes out, who knows what could happen. I could end up getting shuffled around guilds again, and so I want to still have some viability, because I'm sick of fucking guild hopping. So the whole idea is choosing a class, or rather, choosing 3 classes. Now the wild card to all of this is, of course, the Demon Hunter. The Demon Hunter could be the class I've been dreaming of, because it's like a tank and a melee DPS, and it just could be everything I ever wanted. I mean, it's got the power of a warrior, the speed of a rogue, the aesthetic of the warlock. I could be a fucking happy camper. Who knows? But as it stands right now, I've got 11 classes to choose from. So right now, just right off the cuff, the Druid and the Shaman are out. I fucking hate these classes. And this is what I'm judging this all on, is playstyle. I hate these fucking classes so much. I hate them. They're so fucking bad. They're so dull. The Druid, everything about the Druid is a fucking chore. As Feral, energy regenerates too slowly. And you can't do a whole lot, because your energy it takes so fucking long to get your energy back, and you have such a long fucking downtime. I'm someone who likes fast gameplay. I will take a reduction in power in order to attack more. I don't want to be standing there auto-attacking, waiting for shit to happen. I want to be active, I want to be involved in the fight. As a Feral Druid, you don't get that. At all. There's too much downtime with a Feral Druid, and I fucking hate the Feral Druid. The Guardian, to a slightly lesser extent. The Guardian plays much like the Protection Warrior, but of course, if I'm gonna tank, it'll probably just be the Prot Warrior. The Guardian is a lesser form of the Prot Warrior. It has a very fiddly toolkit, and this is all hard to explain without like actually getting into gameplay. The Guardian Druid has always had a very fiddly toolkit for me. Savage Defense is not as like weighty or impactful as Shield Block. Frenzied Rejuvenation is not as useful as Shield Barrier. Pulverize is very situational as long as you can get, like, you gotta get your lacerates and whatnot. It's just a fucking mess. Restoration. There's other healing classes I like more than a Resto Druid, frankly. As it comes to healing, I'm probably looking at either the Monk or the Discipline Priest, depending on what changes they might make to the Discipline Priest. The Shaman, I didn't even mention Balance Druid, who fucking cares? The Shaman, there's no consistency with each spec. Elemental is just too lazy. It's just lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lava burst, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lava burst, maybe cast a flame shock. There's not a lot going on. It's not a very dynamic spec. You guys probably heard from me before, or at least if you read my Tumblr blog a lot, you know I like dynamic, synergizing gameplay. The Elemental Shaman just doesn't have that. The Enhancement Shaman has some dynamic gameplay. It's kind of too dynamic. It's got the same problem I have with the Retribution Paladin, is the fact that you either end up with having too much to do or not enough to do. And so your downtime tends to, like, waver up and down. And this is, again, like I said before, this is hard to describe, at least as far as, you know, like sound design and, you know, visual aesthetics goes, which is really important to me because any class can get the numbers. As far as the game is designed now, any class can get the numbers. Warlords of Draenor has not been kind to any shaman other than Restoration Shaman, for being completely honest. And Restoration, I've got my issues with healing. I've got issues with cast time healing, frankly. I tend to prefer heal over times or channels. Cast time, too slow. It's too slow and it just takes too long, and I'm often sitting there looking at my cast bar like, oh, fucking do something, fucking do something. The Restoration Shaman, or at least as far as I go when it comes to looking for a healer, Restoration Shaman has a big toolkit. And I like a big toolkit as a healer. I like having a lot of stuff to do, but it really just amounts to, you know, more healing. More healing, more healing, more healing, more healing, more healing. And it's just, you know, I can drop a heal over time. I can drop a smart heal over time. I can drop a slightly more powerful heal over time. I can cast a heal. I can cast a faster heal. I can cast a chain heal, which does absolutely fucking nothing. So as you can see, I'm even just bored talking about it. The Druid and the Shaman out completely. So the Warrior, historically my favorite class in World of Warcraft. I've played a Warrior since Vanilla, way back in Vanilla. I played a Warrior since then. I've loved everything about the Warrior. Warrior has been a godsend class for me. They have always been either the best tanks in the game, or they have at least been number 2. When it comes to tanking, you can never go wrong with a Protection Warrior. My choice in the Warrior, however, has sort of had an impact on me ever since I came back to the game, in the fact that most raid design doesn't really favor a Warrior all that much. There's a lot of magical damage, there's a lot of... Warlords of Draenor have been heavy on fire and arcane. Hellfire Citadel even more so. And while you can never go wrong with a Protection Warrior, there's always been a situation where at least one of the other tank classes is better. So the Warrior has always been number 2. You know, the number 2. For any situation for a tank, the Warrior is never number 1, with the possible exception of something like the Butcher, or Fellord Zakuun, where it's really big on physical damage and shield block really shines. But a lot of brute force patchwork style bosses really don't exist in the game. There's like a handful throughout the game that exist entirely as a DPS check. There's never been, there's not an abundance of those. There's a lot of magical damage flying around lately. There's a lot of flat damage. Which I really fucking hate. There's a lot of attacks that just do flat damage, and they will hit you for the same regardless, and it's like, okay, you gotta pop a defensive cooldown. So shield block reduces physical damage taken, but for a lot of these attacks, I've got to use either a shield wall or a demo shout. And yeah, they're intended for cooldowns, but I love the active mitigation model for tanks. I love it a hell of a lot more than threat. But I found in a lot of positions with the Warrior, and I'm not the best player in the world. I'm good. I'm a good player, but I'm not an excellent player. And I've typically found that I find myself at a disadvantage due to my class. And as far as DPS is concerned, I can't stand any of it. I hate it so much. The only DPS spec for the Warrior is one that you are not advised to play, and that is Arms with Slam. The talents you get as Arms, one of them is Slam, one of them is Taste for Blood, one of them is Sudden Death. Sudden Death is advised in most situations, where Taste for Blood for a lot of AoE situations. Slam, is a terrible talent. As far as performance goes, it's a terrible talent. But I like Slam. I like it because it has this stacking effect on itself. It's kind of like Rollout in the old Pokemon games, where the more times you use it in a row, the more powerful it becomes. And so since Arms is heavily focused on Colossus Smash, which reduces armor, I like this idea of building up a full rage bar, hitting Colossus Smash, and then just going to town with slam after slam after slam after slam after slam. Which is a lot more fun, a lot more dynamic than just waiting for execute procs. Waiting for sudden death procs. And hey, I like the idea of, you slam until the boss reaches execute range and then you replace it with execute. That makes a lot of sense. I would hope in Legion, if I'm gonna play DPS on my warrior at all, that one talent is fixed. Is brought up to par with the others. Otherwise, or at least have something in the fucking artifact weapon that is not so heavily focused on execute. I'm hampered by these two abilities. The warrior has a small toolkit for arms, and Fury is no better. Because I'm like, wait, I'm trying to line up in rages. I'm trying to line up in rage with trinket procs and your raging blows. And fucking Christ, I hate every single minute of it because it's not why I rolled this class. I don't like a meticulous design. I want Fury to be this furious, going balls to the wall, pressing whatever's available. I want Arms to just, having a little bit of a meticulous feel, but overall, I'm just crushing you with increasingly harder and harder hits. Fury's the one is like this rabid chipmunk that just keeps biting and biting and biting. Whereas Arms is the one that hits like a steam train. I'm okay with utility, but I don't like a meticulous feel in a warrior. It's not why I rolled this class. Protection, and even Gladiator, is a lot more interesting. You generate your rage and use shield, and you just line up shield charge. And it's just something you naturally do. Funnily enough, Protection has a more furious feel to it, especially with the fun talent for Protection. Unyielding Strikes is advised in every situation, whether you're tanking or DPSing, provided you can line it up properly. And I do need I need an add-on to help me with Unyielding Strikes. But Protection is more furious and more balls to the wall insane than Fury is, which is nuts. I get this idea of just like, okay, I've got 6 stacks, I've got 4 stacks of Unyielding Strikes, I'm gonna pop a shield, shield charge, and I'm gonna just keep hammering that Heroic Strike key on cooldown in between my other abilities. Because Heroic Strike is off the global cooldown, so I can hit someone with like a shield slam or a revenge, and then I can immediately hit Heroic Strike while I'm waiting for the global cooldown. And it's just so furious, and I can easily get away drumming. I can just roll my fingers across the first 4 keys, and I will pretty much win the day, which is nuts, frankly. Yeah, I'll admit that is fucking nuts. It's more in the style of Fury than Fury is. And of course, Gladiator stance is not advised as DPS. It's there, and I think it's there entirely so, Protection warriors can, do solo content without having to switch to a different spec entirely. Or at least just serve a backup DPS. I mean, I can do that if we're in a position where it's like, you know what, we're just clearing trash. We don't need 2 tanks. I can just easily, okay, pop Gladiator stance and I'm good to go in the same fucking gear. So all that stuff with him, so the warrior is a tank only class for me. I can't DPS as a warrior because it just isn't fun. It isn't fun. And there's a high chance if I'm gonna tank, this will be my tank class for Legion. But DPS, no. And I've even told new guild applications, it's just like, no, DPS is not why I rolled this class. It has none of the flavor of a warrior for me. And so if I'm a warrior, I'm prot only. And this is why I'm trying to get 3 characters, because being only 1 spec makes you a burden. The Death Knight. Aesthetically, one of my favorite classes. Really, it's really fucking cool. I mean, how can it not be cool? It's based off Arthas, and I've got fucking killed Alar in a really fucking kick-ass transmog. The Death Knight's probably the character I put the most effort into the transmog for, aside from maybe the Warrior. So, whereas the Warrior had the problem with having 2 specs I don't like, the Death Knight only has 1 spec I don't like, and that is Unholy. I don't like Unholy, it's a little too slow and a little too meticulous for me. I like Blood. Blood is a very interesting way of tanking. I don't like that we have to use Blood Boil for everything. I want more abilities that cause me to swing my fucking weapon. I mean, Jesus Christ, I want to hit someone in the face with that thing. But Frost is a very brutal balls to the wall spec, and you probably tell. I like fast specs, I like fast quick procs. I like just being able to run in and just hit someone and never fucking stop. That's what I like, and Frost does that. There's this thing about Frost going dual wield only because your artifact weapon as Frost is 2 swords that are made out of Frostmourne. How fucking cool is that? That's alright, I like it. I like dual wield Frost. I'm not a big fan of 2-handed Frost actually. So having a 2-handed weapon for Blood and having dual wield for Frost, I can do that. And the thing about my Death Knight is I could theoretically be both a DPS and a tank. I've got the Death Knight in consideration for the tank, for being a tank. That's what I'm looking at it for. But of course, I can, assuming that itemization isn't bizarre, like Blood is all about mastery, but Frost is all about haste and multi-strike, which is, multi-strike's being removed, but it's just an example. It's a problem I have with switching specs is the fact that you need a completely different fucking set of gear in order to do it. I never liked that because I have enough bad luck with gear drops as it is. Last thing I want to do is have to make 2 fucking item sets. But the Death Knight is certainly a solid runner. I've always had fun on my Death Knight. I can never remember being bored on my Death Knight. The only thing I can say I don't like is, how the Death Knights tank. Because their active mitigation comes down to Death Strike, which is a heal plus absorb, and Rune Tap, which is a flat damage reduction. Problem is, Rune Tap reduces your damage taken by 40% for 3 seconds. And it's on a 30-second cooldown. And you can glyph it to be on a 20-second cooldown, but it only reduces your damage taken by 20%. So it's like a fiddly version of Demoralizing Shout on the Warrior. Rune Tap is the worst fucking active mitigation ability in the game. I want my active mitigation there when I need it. And of course you also have to build up stacks for Death Strike. Death Strike requires a lot of stacks to deal with it, and that means you gotta fit in your whole fucking rune regeneration plus your runic power. I think the problem I have with the Death Knight as far as tanking is because you spend your runes to generate runic power in stacks for Death Strike, but Death Strike also costs runes. And Rune Tap also costs runes. And all your runic power goes to Death Coil. Give me an active mitigation ability that uses fucking runic power. That's all I want. I mean, I'm generating all this fucking runic power, I might as well go to something that's actually useful. There's currently talents set in so that when you expend runic power, you have a chance to refresh runes. But of course, I mean, then you've got to decide, do I use my active mitigation or do I try to build up more Scent of Blood stacks? And it's this very fiddly, meticulous thing that I think is just more, it's more finicky and it's more fussy than it needs to be. And runes have always had this problem where you can never get them fast enough. It's just like, oh, I need runes to do this, and you're just watching that cooldown. It's like, come on, come back. Just give me an active mitigation ability that uses runic power. That seems to make a lot of sense. Bring back Rune Strike, and have it do something. Like in Miss Pandaria, I think it was Miss Pandaria, you had the chance to use runic power on Death Coil, but it was more advised to use it on Rune Strike, which was just a melee ability. So why not give me Rune Strike and have it do something like, just have it be like a shield block. Give it the same functionality as fucking shield block. That'd make a lot of sense. I mean, I'm generating runic power. I may as well use it on my fucking active mitigation. And then I have Death Strike there, building stacks for when I actually need it. And then Death Strike becomes something more I use, to dump my stacks, which gives me a heal and it gives me an absorb, and that seems a lot more dynamic. As it stands right now, though, the Prot Warrior is more straightforward and simple. The Monk, my favorite healer in the game, and I'm looking at the Monk as a healer. I haven't given a whole lot of attention to Windwalker and Brewmaster. I did Windwalker while I was leveling, but Brewmaster keeps a lot of fucking plates spinning. It's got the same problem that I have with the Death Knight, where you're keeping track of a million things with very little return on them. But I'm going to be looking into these classes a lot more. I mean, I'm not just basing the decision right here. I am going to be playing them a bit since, for the most part, content is over. And I've got a couple of months to make the decision. But one thing I love about the Mistweaver is that you're always doing something. I like channeling Soothing Mists more than I like casting a heal. Because it's something you're always doing. You click it, and then you're paying attention, and you only have to click it once. And very rarely I've run into a situation where I cast Soothing Mist, and Soothing Mist actually wears down. I usually have to stop channeling Soothing Mist to do something else. And so, I like that system. I like that system where I'm channeling Soothing Mist on my target, and it's just doing its thing. And I like it a hell of a lot more than any sort of cast system. And I even like it more than the Restoration Druid. Problem with the Mistweaver Monk, though, is that it heals for absolutely fucking nothing. It has a very dynamic style where you generate chi. You generate chi and you spend chi on one of 2 abilities, either Enveloping Mists or Uplift. Enveloping Mists is a heal over time that also increases the effectiveness of your Soothing Mists. So in most cases, I want to put that on the tank. The tank starts taking a lot of damage, I hit him with an Enveloping Mist, and I just start Soothing Mist, and he's fine. I like that. I love it. What I don't like is that a lot of your main abilities, like Renewing Mist and Uplift heal for absolutely nothing. They just go in and they just heal for nothing. I think Renewing Mist ticks for 940. And in a world where tanks have fucking 300, 400,000 health, yeah. And where most players have maybe 200,000 health, fuck that. Oh my god. Turn the number up on that. I mean, that's atrocious. Give me a decent heal with Renewing Mist. So there's my problem. I love the Mistweaver. I love everything about the Mistweaver. The gameplay is great, but the chances of actually being able to take the Mistweaver into a raid is low because they just don't have a very high output. And other healers typically do better. You're going to want to take a Restoration Shaman, a Resto Druid, a Discipline Priest, a Holy Priest, a Holy Paladin. Any of the healers currently in the game do a much better job than the Mistweaver does, and it makes me fucking sad. I may look into maybe Windwalker, maybe Brewmaster. I'm gonna give every spec a look in. But right now, the Mistweaver, as far as, you know, entertainment value goes, as far as how fun it is to play, is number one. It's the one I'm most likely going to choose and just pray that they fix it in Legion. Now, as far as DPS goes, the Rogue is currently in the top running. I've played a bit of the Rogue. I've got the fucking Frostwolf Transmog. I've had to play a lot of the Rogue. And I love most of the specs. I'm not a big fan of Subtlety for the simple fact that you can't solo in Subtlety, because one of your abilities, Backstab, requires you to be behind the fucking target. What happens when you're soloing? You're never behind the fucking target, unless you stun him. So it's just hemorrhage, 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 eviscerate. But when I think about a rogue, everything about every rogue spec currently fits, even Subtlety, which I don't like. Assassination fits great because I get behind the target and I just start jamming these big ass fucking daggers into your goddamn spine. That's what I'm doing. Look at that. Look at that. That's a knife. That's a dagger. Damn, that weapon is beautiful. That's fucking awesome. That's a dagger. Screw the little tiny toothpick daggers in this game. That's a dagger. Actually, there's not really a lot I have to say about the Rogue. Energy regeneration can be a tad slow, but the Rogue has mechanics built in to, you know, deal with that. For example, the Assassination Rogue, the more ruptures you put on the target, it's like, the idea of the Assassination Rogue is I want Rupture on every major target. There's a boss, there's 2 ads, I want Rupture up on all of them because it's giving me back energy. And I like how that aspect of gameplay, you know, has some return on your own character. You put Rupture on everything because it gives you more energy to continue stabbing them in the fucking face. Combat, I can't name a situation where I've ever used combat with the exception of Cleave, which is just pop Blade Flurry and then just do your single target rotation as you normally would. It's fun. I gotta be honest, it's fun. I like Assassination the most. I do like Subtlety on the occasion that I play it, but because I've had to do a lot of solo content I found that Subtlety just does not work in open world content, and I found that out exclusively trying to get this fucking Frostwolf set. But the problem with the Rogue is that one spec tends to become dominant, or at least, you know, one or two specs tends to become dominant. That happens less and less as the game goes on and we start getting this situation where, okay, this spec is ideal for this scenario, this spec is ideal for this scenario, and you have dual spec specifically to deal with this, so you end up just leaving one by the wayside. Which for me would probably be Subtlety, unless it turns out to just be really fucking super powerful in Legion. And it's really fucking super powerful now, but I just don't enjoy it. And of course, so if Subtlety ends up being the best raid spec in Legion, Rogue's probably going to have to sit by the wayside, and I'm going to have to do it with someone else. But the other 2 specs, my god, the Rogue has one of the best toolkits in the game. It's like any situation that happens, you can fucking deal with it. I've never seen a DPSer have an ability like Feint, which reduces your AoE damage taken, which means you can in fact be in the fire for a little bit longer. And with a raid design that is so heavily centered around get out of fire mechanics, Feint is the most overpowered fucking ability in the game, and you can also glyph it to reduce all damage taken by 30%. So it's like, no, I'm a rogue, I'm not gonna fucking die. You're gonna hit me, I'm gonna run away, and then I'm gonna come back and shiv you in the ass. But overall, the Rogue is one of the impressive toolkits in the game, and I like that. It's like, okay, so a situation shows up, I know how to fucking deal with it. I have the tools to deal with it. As opposed to most other classes where it's like, I don't have the tools to deal with it. And that's what I love about the Rogue. The Rogue fits its name, it fits its design perfectly. Because he's a sneaky bastard who has she's a sneaky bitch who has an answer for everything. Speaking of sneaky bitch who has an answer for everything, that brings us to the Warlock, my second favorite class in the whole goddamn game. Also my least played class throughout all of Legion. Sorry, all of Warlords of Draenor. Affliction is one of my favorite specs. For the same reason as the Mistweaver is one of my favorite spec, because it's very channel and dot based, and so I'm never in a situation where I feel like I have downtime, or I feel like I'm just too slow. I prefer Drain Soul over Incinerate or Shadow Bolt. That's probably just me. And I've actually, whenever I tried to take this class into a raid, I've actually been taking, substandard talents. Like, the idea is you're supposed to take Archimonde's Darkness to give you 2 charges of Dark Soul, at least in most situations. I have permanently taken Kill Jaden's Cunning, because I've run into so many situations where I end up being so movement heavy and I lose DPS as a result, and I just said, you know what, fuck it. Kill Jaden's Cunning is better. It's just better. I'd rather have that, like, 1 30-second cooldown that lets me move for 8 seconds than have the double fucking cooldowns. And I've actually seen an increase in DPS as a result of it, because these fights are so fucking movement heavy. And the ability to just cast a Haunt and then channel Drain Soul on the move, it's less effective for Affliction, because when you're on the move, you can just refresh your fucking dots, or at least 2 of your dots. But it's also worked out really well for Destruction, and indeed for Demonology. Demonology was a different kettle of fish. I could just pop in Demon form and just Touch of Chaos over and over and over and over and over again, until I was in the right position. Those are relatively rare circumstances, and overall, with Affliction now being the major single target DPS spec, I found Kill Jaden's Cunning to be more worthwhile. The ability, long story short, the ability to cast on the move will always be superior to everything else. Aesthetically, I love the Warlock class. And Demonology is being reworked to be all about summoning demons as opposed to becoming a demon, because that's going to the Demon Hunter. So I'm probably looking at Legion is probably going to, at least the Warlock is going to get a really big look in for me. Entirely down to the fact that I love everything about this class. It's a mage, but it's cooler. I like the whole shadow and fire aspect. I love the green fire. You guys probably saw the video of me trying to get that green fire, and I was just putting so much fucking effort into it. So everything about the Warlock is just something I love. I can't think of an aesthetic downside. The playstyle, I love it. I'm not a big fan of Destruction, but there is something to be said for those few moments where you get a lot of ads clumped up together, and you just pop your Fire and Brimstone and you bathe everyone in fire over and over and over and over and over again. It's one of the most cool looking cleave specs I've ever seen in the game. So as far as DPS goes, the Rogue and the Warlock are number 1. They're the number 1 and number 2, respectively, as you can see it by the ordering here. There's very little about the Warlock I dislike. The only thing I do dislike is really its own talent system. Its own talent system tends to be a tad boring, and so I'm entirely reliant on the base gameplay mechanics of the class. The Priest. A Priest. Oh, I gotta fix that transmog. Or as I like to call it, the Warlock with less cool stuff. And I'm gonna say this right now, Shadow is out for me. I don't like Shadow. And I don't like Holy either. I actually like Discipline, because there's a lot of, you get channel ability. The Discipline Priest is an interesting creature for me, because as it's designed right now, it has this interesting mix of offensive and defensive in the form of Archangel. So like you attack the enemy, it generates atonement heals. But the whole point is you're building up, I forget what the fucking buff's called, but you build up these stacks and you use an ability that consumes those stacks to gain a healing boost. So it has this dynamic combination of being offensive as well as healing and putting shields up. I like to call it the Josh spec. Because, sometimes you're just going to be whacking the enemy with holy damage, but for the most part, you're shielding enemies, you're healing them, you're purging debuffs, and so you end up focusing on a lot in a given fight. Where is the boss? Where is my tank? Where are my allies? And as you can probably tell, this is something I really love. I love very involved classes. The Priest is the other class after the Monk that I'm looking at in regards to healing. However, I keep hearing that Discipline is getting some redesigns in Legion, so I'm just keeping that on the fence. Everything here is predicated on what the redesigns are in Legion. I'm gonna get every class here up to level 110. So I will have more than enough time to adjust to the changes being made to each class. The Hunter. Where the fuck did my pet go? Yeah, who cares? So the Hunter is the Hunter's the one getting the most redesigns, where Marksmanship has no pet, Beast Mastery does have a pet, and Survival is going melee. I like that idea. The ability to swap between ranged and melee is an attraction of the Shaman, and does any other class really do that? Have a combination of ranged DPS and melee DPS? The Druid has it too. So the ability to swap between ranged DPS and melee DPS depending on the fight is something I think could actually be pretty fucking cool. Provided, again, that the actual stat priority of each spec is identical. Or at least as close to identical as possible. So it's like, okay, I can just swap into another spec. I can just swap into Survival and be melee for this fight. So the Hunter is the one who will probably survive most raids. Because raids tend to be slanted one way or another between melee and ranged, and the ability to choose between the two is very important. So it's like, oh, this fight is melee unfriendly. Okay, cool, I'm gonna pop into marksmanship. Oh, this fight is very unfriendly, is very melee focused. Cool, I'm gonna pop into survival. That was actually the original design of survival. Survival is a very melee focus spec. It wasn't advisable to play in melee since, at least in vanilla, you were typically just auto-shotting the boss, so you didn't want to be in melee range for that. But there was a small bread and butter of that within the game, as far back as vanilla goes. So to see survival becoming a true melee class is interesting. And supposedly the hunter is getting a big redesign to have each spec differentiate themselves from one another. Good idea, honestly. One problem with the hunter is that every spec plays very much the same, and it tends to get very boring very quickly. But I do like sending my raptor in to gnaw at someone's throat while I shoot at him with a gun or a bow or something. And guns tend to have some of the coolest weapon models in this whole fucking game. And only hunters get them. There's 3 weapon sets, bows, guns, and crossbows, that only hunters get. But yeah, the hunter is a definite maybe. Like I said, the rogue and the warlock take priority as far as DPS goes. So the hunter, it comes in a close third. There's just nothing really I don't like about the hunter. They have the same thing with the rogue, where they have an answer for every situation, and that's what I like. I like having an answer for everything, at least when I'm DPSing, because I'm that guy who wants to do those other mechanics, because just standing at the boss and pew 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 is so fucking dull. I don't like DPS when it's just stand there and shoot 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 shoot. I find that to be really fucking boring, and that's why I've never really been a main DPS in any expansion of the game. The Paladin, maybe. Maybe. That's all I'm gonna say about that right now. The Retribution Paladin is very spammy. It's like an ADHD fueled child. It's very spammy. Very spammy. Spam, 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 spam. It's just, there's so many fucking props with the Retribution Paladin. And the Prot Paladin I find to be just a very weak form of the warrior. Shield of the Righteous is an interesting creature where it just reduces all the damage taken for a small amount of time, but again, it's only 3 seconds. And you get a lot of holy power very quickly, but fucking Christ. I don't like, compared to Shield Block, Shield Barrier, and Demo Shout, I do not like Shield of the Righteous. And I don't like that Word of Glory is my other active mitigation ability as a Paladin. And I fucking hate that. It's just a heal. That's all it is. It's just a fucking heal. Why do I have this? Give me an Absorb Shield at least. Change Word of Glory to be an Absorb when you're in fucking Prot spec. And Holy, Holy's just cast. And you guys know I don't like that. I mean, I don't like the Holy Priest as it is. It's just you cast a heal, you cast a heal, you cast a heal, you cast a heal, you cast a heal. And the Holy Paladin is that cranked up to 11. So the Paladin is kind of like relatively low down the list. It's above the Druid and the Shaman. And lastly, we have the Mage, the Mage, the Wizard. It's very fun. Very fun. I tend to favor Arcane and Frost over Fire. Fire is all about big crits, but slow casts. Slow casts, I don't like slow casts. The problem with the Mage, one spec typically becomes dominant in almost every situation. And I'd hate for that to be one of the boring classes. It's like, as I get further down the list, I just have less and less to say about a given class. But the Mage is a maybe. It's in the same boat as the Paladin, where it's a very big maybe. You know, assuming every other class I have lined up for DPS just turns out to not be all that much fun. But I would rather play the Rogue, because it's a melee class, and I tend to favor melee over ranged. And I would certainly rather play the Warlock. I mean, if it comes down between the Mage and the Warlock, I'm going to pick the Warlock every single time. Mage is something of an afterthought, really. And of course, my Mage is Alliance, so I'm either going to have to faction change or server change. Because the server I'm on is not very Alliance friendly. But that rounds out pretty much every character I have. As you can see, I've got my favorites. You know, the Warrior, the Death Knight, the Monk, the Rogue, the Warlock, and the Priest. Those are my top tier guys, and choosing one class is difficult enough. Choosing a whole fucking A team is going to be even more difficult, because then I'm asking more of a guild. It's like, okay, I have to gearing up 3 classes in order to like be less of a burden, because I just want to raid. I just want to get in the fucking raid and do the fucking bosses. And if I've got to be DPS or healer to do that, I would like to be having fun while I'm doing that. So let me know what you guys thought about this. If you guys want to see more 3 AM rambles where I'm looking into more in-depth of the other classes, as I'm trying to make this decision. But hey, thanks for listening to my mostly pointless rant. I'll see you next time.